Welcome, everyone, to today's APT and Cybersecurity LinkedIn Live event, Bridging Threat Intelligence and Threat Hunting, Turning Data into Action. I'm Aaron Stillwell, joined by my co-host, Alex Mavro, and we're thrilled to dive into a critical topic for today's cybersecurity landscape. In a world where threats like Volt Typhoon, Redline, and Ghost ransomware evolve daily, transforming raw intelligence into proactive defense is no small feat. That's why we're joined by Lee Archinal, Senior Threat Hunt Analyst at Intel 471, whose decade of experience from SOC leadership to crafting hunt packages makes him the perfect guide. Today, we'll explore how to connect the dots between threat intel and hands-on hunting, tackling real-world challenges like siloed teams and AI limitations, and uncovering actionable strategies to stay ahead of today's adversaries. This is an interactive discussion, and we want you, our guests, to post your questions in the comments sections below. We will be answering them during the session and opening up to Q&A at the end. Running and producing these sessions takes time, effort, and resources. Alex and I do this on a part-time voluntary basis to help the community. If you find value in our discussions, please consider supporting us with a donation. Your contribution helps us cover production costs, improve content quality, and keeps this community thriving. Lee, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
Awesome. So Lee, first question. What's the most common misconception you hear about threat hunting?
So it's got to be based on the outcome of a hunt. There's a lot of conversation, and I try to dispel the myth that similar to detection engineering, how that's like binary, how it's either detected or it's not detected. People think threat hunting is the same way. Whereas threat hunting can have multiple outcomes. Yes, you could find the adversary, you could find the malicious or suspicious activity, or you don't. But in that you didn't find it, there are other findings that you might come across, like suspicious activity internally. So like maybe signs of a insider threat. You could have a idea that, hey, you know what? We didn't find malicious activity, but we have the logs that are needed, so we have that visibility. Or you found a visibility gap to say, hey, we ran this hunt, we looked for this activity, we couldn't find anything. We didn't find any logs that would even support this.
Yeah.
Which is still a key finding. And then policy-based, like shadow IT kind of things like that. So there's a lot of different outcomes of a successful threat hunt than just finding the adversary.
Yeah.
Okay. You have taught and built hunting curriculum. What's the simplest test you use to tell whether a team is really hunting versus just running detection rules?
So it comes more down to the question of, are you reacting?
Yeah,
or being proactive?
indeed. Yeah, correct.
And there's a lot of things around that, and we try to help move from reactive to proactive. But that's like the simple question, how are you getting your intel? What's driving your hunts? Why are you doing this? What are you doing it for? And if it is more based off of alerts, detections, things like that, we try to work through the process of here's how we can get to a proactive process versus, being an extension of the SOC.
Yeah. And have you seen, in your experience, have you seen people that are more proactive or reactive?
Oh yeah. I work with multiple levels of maturity organizations. Some we get in there and I talk to them and they're just like, we got this. And you ask about like what they've done and how they've done it, and you're like, wow, yeah, like you do it. And then you have the organizations that are just beginning to talk about threat hunting. And that's where the guiding comes in of using intel, leveraging your CTI team that already exists, grabbing that good information that they have and looking at it in a way of a threat hunter instead of just grabbing a SITREP report so that you can provide that to executive leadership so they can make decisions. Using that intel to drive your threat hunting is really the first couple steps that we talk about to becoming proactive.
Okay. That's good.
Actually, I do have a question, but is there certain kind of organizations that seem to be more mature when what you've seen in your history?
No, you would think it'd be like a certain industry, but it's really not. It really depends on leader, or I guess the looking back at their leadership, how leadership talks about threat hunting, what view they have of it, and what perspective they have of it. That really helps with those, because you could have a really good mature organization that you would think, talk about their SOCs mature, detection engineering mature, but if they're taking their first steps into threat hunting, that process still might be more of a reflection of detection engineering than threat hunting. But then you
Yeah,
have some customer or some organizations that they're trying to build everything together up at the same time, and everyone's maturing together, everyone's flowing, and they're more mature simply because they're growing together like that versus, and not that it's like bolting on technology, like, but it's just, that new capability next to a mature organization or a mature team kind of learns from that mature team instead of paves their way, if that makes sense.
I could see, and I could definitely see where resources, employee retention has got to be important there with maturity.
Oh yeah, oh yeah. And I mean, if you try to take like a seasoned SOC analyst or detection engineer and say, hey, you're threat hunting now, and you don't provide them guidance, they're going to do what they do best.
Of
And
course.
I
Yeah.
mean, so, it was what it is. The fact that they're talking about threat hunting is still huge, because it's still like, I feel like cybersecurity just got a seat at the table. Now threat hunting is slowly getting there as well.
I think those things, it depends of what you find, what you discover, how you get that info, how mature is the team, for example. It's based on these things. This is how I know most of the people that I'm working with, even if it's SOC, even if it's CTI, cyber threat intelligence, even if it's a different other team, could be, I don't know, Unix, Windows, backup storage, doesn't matter. In the end, all those people, if those people are senior, let's say like that, and they have at least 5, 8, 10 years in the industry, they know how to do their job in the end, to do or to perform that action or whatever they are doing.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
please,
And that's why they're there, though, right? That's why
yeah,
they're senior, because they are excellent in what they do, and now you just try
yeah,
and their focus and say, "Do this now." Um, but no, it's good to have that knowledge. Those people really add value to the team, especially when it comes to tribal knowledge. Just knowing that right away and knowing the environment, how it works, then you can start building threat hunting around it. I think is really beneficial.
yeah. Intel 471 emphasizes intelligence-driven hunting. Could you please define what you mean by intelligence, and when does it actually hurt hunting through bias or noisy?
Okay, so I'm gonna kind of I'm a hunter, and I don't
Okay.
want to insult a bunch of CTI analysts out there um, with my definition of threat intel. Uh, I think its basic form is anything that is valuable or actionable to an organization based on their cyber threat landscape. Now, I'm sure I didn't do that justice to anyone at Intel 471, which I apologize. But when it hurts the hunt, I would say the number one thing would be when there's not enough actual data.
Okay.
Um, and so bias, I can't really think that it affects hunting, because when we look at a report, when it talks about attribution, as a hunter, attribution is kind of like another piece of the puzzle
Yeah.
versus the entire solution. So what I look for in a piece of intel is TTPs, behaviors, command line arguments, like artifacts that capture what happened on during the compromise. And the reason I look for these is because, and the reason I want to say that I don't play the attribution game, I let the CTI analysts handle that because I trust them. They are
Mhm.
much better at their job than I could ever be. So I'm not going to like question them, but I'm going to keep that in the back of my mind, because at the end of the day, if I can start seeing all these TTPs and behaviors and these
Yeah.
artifacts that are left behind, that I can go back and research and reflect and say, these match up to these previous campaigns run by the same actor. Now, that attribution is growing bigger and bigger, and I can be more confident to say, yes, this was indeed this person or this group. The reason I'm always hesitant is because there are a lot of TTPs and behaviors that are used by
Indeed.
everyone, by
Yeah.
adversaries, by malware, and the biggest example I always use is PowerShell encoded commands. I mean, if you think about PowerShell encoded commands, the first thing I always think of was phishing or macro-enabled documents. Well, now it's used in malware for just general obfuscation of command line arguments. It's used by legitimate tools out there,
Mhm.
some like even security tools, that they just run their commands encoded, which is what it is. But then you have admins using that, and then you
Yeah.
have all these legitimate things. So you don't always want to just like jump on that bandwagon and be like, yep, it's them. So looking back and using those artifacts, where are they dropping their malware or the payloads? Does it always land in the app data temp directory? Does it land in the user's public directory? Those kind of things are always beneficial. And just to repeat, I guess, long story short, is that the only time it hurts is when there isn't enough actionable artifacts. If it's something that you're going to use or provide to your threat hunt team, I hope there's enough indicators of attack or IOAs in there that they can actually use to hunt for. Because if you just say the payload was dropped or this malware landed, what can you really do about that? Because
Mhm.
even if you leverage IOCs, I mean, they
Yeah.
change. And please stop me if I'm very long-winded, so stop me if I
No, please. We love this. Go
Please.
ahead. No, this is what we want.
Okay, perfect.
I really like what I hear in the
Yeah.
end.
Well, I know I can only stand my voice for so long, so I feel the public and the people that are listening. But so for IOCs, if they're just IOCs in Intel report as well, that's somewhat actionable. As long as it's timely, you can still take those IOCs and do an IOC scan, over 30, 60, 90 days, because those are great because they are the quick wins that I like to
Yeah.
like. They are tied to a malicious process, they're tied to a malicious file, but they change so quick that
Indeed.
and from campaign to campaign, from day to day, from minute to minute, that they can only take you so far. With those indicators, or with that supplemental information of the indicators of attack, or the artifacts I like to call, that's where the behaviors lie. Like I mentioned, like, are they dropping it in the same directory every single time? Are they using scheduled tasks for persistence, or are they modifying the run registry key? Or are they making a service? Like, how do they operate day in, day out, from campaign to campaign? What are the overlaps? What are the similarities? That's where you want to look.
Yeah.
I guess the question is it having those artifacts throughout the kill chain? Is that very important?
So throughout the kill chain would be great.
Yeah.
If you could have it at multiple stages of the attack, then you are providing the hunters more opportunities for success. Now, even if you don't have all of them, if you have some, that's beneficial too.
But what are the chances when you do this, for example? Could be 50-50 or could be less than that?
That there are the IOAs in the report, or that it's all throughout the kill chain.
I'm talking more on the kill chain, what Aaron mentioned earlier.
So having all the artifacts throughout the entire kill chain, I would say that's rare. In Intel,
Okay.
well, I should say, in a post-mortem Intel report, like after a post-compromise,
Yeah.
that's normally what we find. We find, like, they've gone through instant response, they've gone through the whole mitigation steps, and they've done the digital forensics and everything, and they found everything that they were looking for, and they can map it out. during a campaign, like if there is intel being produced actively during a campaign, we normally get like bits and pieces.
Okay. Interesting.
So I think you kind of covered this already, but I'll definitely ask this question again because maybe you could delve in deeper. But you shared hunt packages for anomalies like scheduled tasks for abnormal locations, or stuff like you talked about the PowerShell, something like tied to the Ghost ransomware. What are the biggest barriers to feeding live intel from sources like Forescout into these hunts, and how have you overcome silos at Intel 471?
So silos. the biggest thing that we've always tried to do is just start communication.
Okay.
Whether that be internally or externally. And something I do is I'm what we call a threat hunt account manager. So I meet with our hunter or our customers that have the hunter or Hunter 471 platform. So my job is to help them mature. Part of the things that we try to do is during our meetings, if they are mentioning or if we're at the point where it's like, hey, we want to get mature. What's your next step? And we start talking about intel-driven threat hunting. The first step I say is like bring your CTI analysts, bring whoever you want to this meeting. This is not just for hunters. This is for a lot of people to sit down, get the same vision, see what's happening, so that we can all move forward with it. And I've trained CTI analysts, or I shouldn't say I trained CTI analysts. I've presented to CTI analysts. I've presented to incident responders. I presented to hunters. And the questions are great because as you're talking to these organizations and these groups, they all have a different perspective. Sometimes, like I didn't even think of it. Like CTI analyst would ask me something, I was like, wow, I would have never thought about that because I've never been in your shoes. But being able to tie it back and show everyone what we're doing here and how we're doing it is really beneficial because then CTI can look for those things that may be missing, or they may prioritize, like IOAs into
Yeah.
the hunters and stuff like that.
I never thought about that, about how you're helping them become proactive with what they're doing.
Yeah, it's like it's a great opportunity for me. I love it. Like
Yeah.
being able to just speak and talk and try and like open everyone's eyes so that we're all on the same page and we're constantly trying to build bridges between teams in our organization so that they know what each other's doing and then they can operate better.
Yeah.
May I add a question over here? From data to decision. In your Forbes piece on AI and short retention EDR data, you showed how benign but our behaviors can look malicious. How should hunters validate intel-driven hypotheses in real time without drawing in false positives? And on top to this, can you share a case where bad data led a hunt astray? Of course,
Okay.
don't provide anything
No,
to your clients.
no sensitive, no
Yeah,
sensitive.
maybe we don't have to do the last one, I guess.
It will just be very short. So the problem with, or I shouldn't say it's not a problem. The hurdle that threat hunters face,
Yeah.
always false positives.
Okay.
It's something that won't go away. And here's why. Detection engineering is designed as a process that looks and takes time and
Indeed.
analyzes and looks at the business processes, look at standards, looks at policies, looks at everything, right? And they can determine this should happen in our environment,
Mhm.
this should not. Adversaries know that. So what they're doing is they're looking at a global like footprint and they're saying, how can we blend in?
Okay.
That problem is the biggest problem for threat hunters because they're like, all right, well, I bet I can use Windows Command Shell. I bet I can use PowerShell. And I
Yeah.
bet I can use the native living off the land binaries or the LOL bins that exist on every Windows machine. to gain some information. At that point, you're past the line of detection engineering. Now, I will say there are some organizations that have implemented so many controls and restrictions that saying anyone but admins using PowerShell would be an alert.
Yeah, I know.
Great. Most do not, though. So PowerShell and Windows Command Shell being restricted is slowly gaining favor, but not so much.
You know where I saw that thing? In the financial sector. I'm working in the financial sector.
Oh, yeah?
And there are a lot of controls like that. Yeah.
And that's wonderful. I love okay, I'm going to put a quick plug real
It sounds like PowerShell is your biggest nightmare.
like that. Have you ever watched or listened to Darknet Diary?
No.
Oh man, you got to check out the podcast. It's Jack.
Okay.
But episode, oh man, I hope I get this right live.
Aaron, I think we have some homework.
Yeah, I know. I'm writing it down. Darknet Diary.
Episode 34 is Jeremy from marketing. I think.
Okay.
Please fact check me, those who are listening. Basically, I think it was a financial organization.
Okay.
Right.
Interesting.
And they paid this guy to be a pen test. Right. He goes in there. His name's Jeremy from marketing, and his goal was to compromise the environment. So he was struggling day in, day out. And I think, if I remember right, day 3, he finally cracked. He's like, whatever. He put the payload on a USB, went to some woman in there or some employee, I can't remember, gave it to them, and they plugged it in, and he had a shell for 30 seconds, and then it closed down. He went back. You did it wrong. Do it again. Shell opened up, closed down. Finally, he went back, and the whole IT security team was standing there. He's like, they're like, it was him, and the gig was busted. He's like, pulled out the tape, but basically he's like, how did you find it? It's like, and the whole IT team was there, and they're like, we're the only ones allowed to use PowerShell. And like that alone is just great, because if you have that detection and those restrictions in place, then yeah. But I digress. So going back to false positives, the best thing you can do when determining a hypothesis is profile your environment. Now, this is more of a data-driven effort than a hypothesis-driven effort. Hypotheses, you think about PowerShell encoded commands, scheduled tasks being abused, registry key modifications. Data-driven is you take all the data you have and you look at it big picture and say, what's happening here? What's normal? What's not? And I know specifically in that article, we were talking about AI helping. That's where I think AI shines, is being able to look at large data sets, identify patterns that humans might miss. So if you can do that and say, all right, well, here's all the things that are similar. Here's the things that happen a lot in our environment and are legitimate. Exclude them. Now, when I say exclude them, I don't mean set them in stone and say, if this ever happens. I would say to identify abnormalities, exclude them as specific as possible. I mean, host name, username, process command line arguments, parent process name, all those things that would get it down to this is the exact thing that happens every time and it's normal. Exclude it, so that even if one thing is off, you can say, okay, it's same user, same host, but instead of pinging just 4 times, it pinged once, or it pinged 1,000 times. Like that little change of parameter would stick out. But being able to look at a large data set and identify the commonalities in your environment, that would really help. But false positives will not go away.
For sure.
I will say one business use case. Again, PowerShell encoded commands. We do what we call guided hunts, where it's a 2-hour process, and I sit with them and I go through the process that I just talked about. We aggregate the data, we by count, we look through, and we meticulously, literally, we're sharing the screen and we're okay, that's normal. The thing is, what you can do is you can look at some things. One was we were going through the whole process, and then there was syswow 64.
Wow.
Only once, right? Everything else was system 32. And then we found some name that was just completely off. Like the host name was not along with their normal nomenclature. The
Yeah.
username was off too. And ironically, they were like, "Give me a second." And he called someone and came back. He was like, "Hey, we just caught our red team." And I was like, "Sweet!" Like, how cool was that? Granted, the artifacts were like there, but I mean, at the same time, just working through that process of learning your environment better, identifying what's normal before you can identify what's abnormal, it really gets you there.
So I see SK just post. I'm going to post something real quick. Let me see. I'll just show it real fast, and then we could just do the as the bottom. So what he says here is talks about the kill chain, but how do you prioritize hunts when key artifacts may be missing, or how can Intel help fill these gaps? I know it's not showing the whole thing, but
Okay, so in practice, so I guess this might not be the answer you're looking for, but I try to work as far left on the MITRE ATT&CK matrix as possible. Normally, that's initial access. Rarely is it reconnaissance. Rarely is it resource development. But if you can look at initial access or execution and persistence, those three, if you prioritize those, normally you'll find the rest of the artifacts you're looking for. Granted, there are artifacts that are somewhat rare, but if you follow the same process, and I think I call it like my big five. Whenever we run a hunt, I always think about big five like event types: process creates, network connections, file creates, DNS activity, and registry key modifications. These on an endpoint are normally indicative of something that is there's something happening, right? It's compromised or suspicious activity or whatever. And if you follow the artifacts that you find with those big five, normally you'll be able to identify or realize the rest of the contextual information surrounding it. Because if you see rare execution on this one machine, you're naturally going to aggregate there or navigate there, right? And once you get there, you apply those big five, you might start seeing strange DNS queries, right? Which could be to C2 servers. You could see registry key modifications, or services being created, or scheduled tasks, and any sign of like persistence is always normally. I shouldn't say always, is normally early on, because that adversary does not want to have to try and social engineer you again. They don't want to try and send another phishing email. Hopefully, if they did come in through credentials that they got from somewhere, that we realize that, and then you can still see these things happening. So no matter how they got there, there's normally I forgot discovery. That's a big one too. But there's normally a early compromise trend of things that happen right away. If you can identify those, hopefully first you stop it. You can mitigate and even prevent the rest of the attack. But then you can like follow along, see where that data leads you, see where the artifacts go. Or are you seeing the same types of activity or events on different hosts, which would indicate either lateral movement or other machines that are being compromised? So from that point of view, that's kind of how I always approach it. Because the last thing I want to do is like, all right, my hypothesis is that ransomware has executed. And you're like, hey, we found it, ransomware executed. What are you gonna do then? Right? Like, okay, sorry guys. I think our user could have identified that because their screen's all locked out and everything.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, that's normally the approach I take.
Okay. Aaron?
So Lee, you evangelize hunting at Black Hat, but AI promises automation. Where does AI fall short in turning data into action? For example, in chaining intel from reports like Kaspersky's Angry Lyco into custom hunts, and also what human oversight is non-negotiable?
Okay, and I'm going to die on this sword, and I think I forget the actual quote from like the IBM user manual, but AI should not be left for decision making.
Yeah, I agree.
And I apologize if that upsets anyone, but the fact of the matter is, AI is very, very smart. But at
Indeed.
the very bottom of every chat GPT or whatever bot you're using, there's normally that blurb of chat can make mistakes.
Oh yeah.
Just like humans, right? So
Yeah.
you don't want to ever be like, chat said this, it's over, right? I apologize for using ChatGPT as the example. Not that it's a bad thing. I use it day to day. But it shouldn't be relied on for decision making. The way I would use AI is resource gathering, because I've done some things where I ask it like, "Hey, can you get me a bunch of resources based on this?" And it's like, boom, 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 boom. That just saved me a bunch of time
Oh yeah.
going Googling and stuff like that. So that's where it shines
You're using for web scraping.
in a very legitimate, positive way. Yes. Like,
You know what? We've had like I said, we've had CISOs on here. We've had some some unbelievable people we talked to, and the AI discussion obviously that's at the forefront of everything right now. And one of the best quotes was when someone said that she's not looking to get rid of her team. She's looking at AI to augment the capabilities of the
Yeah.
team to make them better. And I love that idea, right? Is people are terrified, right? Obviously, people are terrified of losing their jobs. That's what it comes down to, right?
Indeed.
right.
And her quote on that, she's like, "I'm not going to get rid of my teams. I just want to augment to make them better, right? I want to provide them tools to make it faster and better," which I liked a lot.
I feel like we're at the state where SOAR came in a couple years ago, or
Yeah.
longer than a couple years ago. But everyone was worried about being like, because now you have this process that can do all those steps. And unfortunately, I feel like in the news, unless it's just all like scare bait or whatever, unfortunately, it's happening. But I agree, AI should not replace analyst. It should be relied upon as or built into your processes and procedures, but
Yes.
not replace all of the processes and procedures. It should be able to just provide you as much information as possible and let you make the decision.
Yes.
The one thing I don't like is the not that it's a black box, but if you baked in AI to your security tool, and you can add what the natural language processing and say, show me possibly compromised machines in my environment, and it shows you 3 machines. First
Yeah.
of all, what is the algorithm or whatever decided? What was the deciding
That's
factor?
a great point. How do you know the back end what it's telling you is the truth?
Right.
Yep.
And second, what is it not showing me? And that's the biggest question is like, okay, well, you brought these 3 hosts, but what about the rest? Like, let me see the rest. Let me make that decision versus asking it to be like, can you show me suspicious activity and it going through that large data set like that I've talked about and saying, well, out of all these instances, only one time was PowerShell or command used this way. Or only one time did this user log in after midnight. If you can tell me that and explain to me the whole or why and what your reasoning was, then that's great. But when
Yeah.
it's just like, hey, here it is, it's like, okay, now what?
Again, making your guys better.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. You have argued short EDR retention undermines hunting. Walk us through an attack that slips past 30-day retention, but is exposed with 90 to 120 days.
So I would have to say, one of the things that I love when organizations do is when they take their EDR logs and pump them into their SIM. That I think is a number one genius idea. Because why not? Why not? And now the why not, I think I know the answer to.
Yeah, the cost.
Yes.
Exactly. Yeah.
But if you can do that, then that will help you be able to identify that. Unfortunately, I do understand that some tools just have the 30 days. The downfall there is that you don't have that large data set that you can do data driven over large sets of data, right? Or like the unstructured hunts, I like to call them.
Okay.
Now, where I would really put my efforts is those hunts that are behavioral, that are common, in more of a structured form, like the hypothesis driven. Focus those in your EDR. Set up scheduled searches so that you have all these queries that will run once a day, probably a Sunday, over 7 days, so from Sunday to Sunday.
Yeah.
And once I come in Monday, I have this report on my desk, or I should say Excel spreadsheets on my desk saying, here's what was found, or here was not here, nothing was found. That way, if you do have a short retention, you can really look for those behaviors that are common, and identify them specifically because they are EDR, right? They are endpoint focused.
Yeah.
But then the SIM, capture out all those other all those things that you're looking for. Do the unstructured hunts there. It's because you have the better or the larger set of data. Hopefully, there's some overlap. Now, I shouldn't say there should be 100% overlap because that's I wouldn't recommend that. It's not feasible, especially when you think about the amount of registry keys that exist on a Windows machine. Actually, I brought down our lab at Cyborg Security because my VM was spiking because when I was trying to create a hunt package, I was looking for activity on a specific registry key and it wasn't working. Okay. So I turned on audit logging on that key. It didn't work. Spoiler alert, it was user error. It had nothing to do with the logging. But then I went back and I was like, okay, nothing's working. And I just slowly crept up, trying to up the hive. So the scope grew wider and wider and wider. Finally, I just turned on all registry key modification, on every single key. And if you've ever messed with regedit, you'll realize there's millions, or maybe not, thousands of registry keys. And I don't have those all pumping in, right? So that was on that, no organization is going to do that because then, the whole network or firewall log joke, when your SIM's full of firewall logs, will turn into registry keys. But what I would do is take a look at the overlap between your EDR and your SIM. Yeah. See what logs you're capturing that you don't need to be capturing extra in your SIM, and identify what's not being captured, and then enable that in your SIM. So those registry keys that are missed, those directories that are missed, that are commonly abused, look for those, enable auditing on those. So then you have that blend, and hopefully something that may last longer than 30 days will eventually show up in the different logs that you have found. Hope that answered your question.
Okay. How do you sell longer retention to cost focused boards?
Oof. Luckily, I don't have to do that. The one thing I can do is arm our customers with as much information as possible to say, look, and the best approach we take is talking about visibility again. There are some behaviors and hypotheses or hunt packages that we have in the Hunter platform that they rely on auditing of a very specific registry key that probably 99% of organizations aren't looking at. And if that is the case, the best way we can show value and to talk about that retention is to say, we emulated this activity. We modified this registry key. We didn't see it in our EDR, and we didn't see it in our SIM. So what that means is if this activity would occur in a malicious way, you would not see it. Now, granted, you can see, or you may see the things that are happening around it. But if you wanted to take that hunt and that hypothesis and promote it to a detection, and say anytime this registry key is modified, alert, then you can't. You still can't because you still don't have that log or that evidence that's needed.
Yeah.
So that's how we arm our customers for that. Unfortunately, we don't have any say in that really, but being able to tell the story of why you need more logs or why you need better visibility, that really does help people and organizations understand the threat.
True. Yeah, I agree.
So, Lee,
Aaron?
some of your daily reads often highlight TPPs such as Volt Typhoon, Silver Fox, but in fast-moving espionage ops like the UACs 0063, how do you balance proactive behavioral hunting with urgent IOC-based triage so you don't miss lateral movement?
I feel like that goes back to the data-driven unstructured hunting. And that's I wouldn't say that's for mature organizations only, because I've actually met some organizations that are really good at unstructured hunting, and when they get the hunter platform because they want to improve their hypothesis-based or structured hunting. But being able to understand the value of unstructured hunting would help with espionage cases. I believe because there's I mean, you think about ransomware, right? There's like a clear chain of smash and grab. They jump in, initial access. They might gain persistence. Some I've read about that didn't even bother with it. These are like whatever, like we're gonna detonate in like an hour anyways. But going through and saying like those similar ransomware tech TTPs and behaviors. If you think about espionage, it's someone gaining access to your environment and sitting and
Yeah.
watching.
Yeah. Yeah.
And how do you understand that? Or like what hypothesis do you create surrounding that? Which I feel like you can't.
Yeah,
Unless
because you're looking at such a fine line of abnormal behavior at that point, and
Right.
one that they sit for 3-4 months,
Yeah,
don't do
right.
anything.
And that's where that large data retention really helps. Because
Yes.
you can sit there and be like, okay, what directories or files may being accessed that aren't normally accessed. And once again, there's no hard artifacts that we can provide every organization to create that. I mean, we can do the like I said, the normals, app data temp, users public directory, downloads, things like that we all know about and understand. But when it comes to specific organizations and people sitting and waiting and watching, we don't have their infrastructure built. Like we don't, it is their own. But that's like I said, that's where the unstructured hunting is, and really understanding your environment. And I guess UBA can kind of be brought in, like the user-based analytics. That
Yeah,
really,
I was going to ask you because I worked for a company that did that a while back, and the issue was it's doing statistical analysis and everything else on this data, right, and probabilistic analysis, but it was the structure of the data, right? It needed to be structured data, and unstructured data is very hard when you're trying to plug it into complex math to make it work, and then trying to find out, okay, I have this unstructured data with this complex max that doesn't fit in correctly, and then I'm looking to basically look for behaviors that are abnormal through a certain time frame, and that was always the issue. I wonder, is that still the issue today? Have you seen that?
I have not actually gone into like UBA technologies since
Yeah,
it was
it's
in
been a
my
while for me
first
too.
talk. I will say it was definitely onto something. But if you, like thinking about like how everything's weighted, sometimes kind of blew my mind. It was like, well, like how
Yes.
how do you assign that as a static weight versus um, like something that can flow? Because it's like, okay, well, this was weird, but was there anything else weird around it? Like, because if you said it was like a 10, like automatically you're alerted, but it was just like a one-off, right? Versus a bunch of like point ones or like a one, if they all stacked and then equal to 10, I think that would still be more suspicious. Or even if it was a 5, if you had multiple anomalous behaviors stacked on each other, I feel like that would trigger more than just that 110 event.
Yes.
But I mean, my idea is just profiling. Go and look at and when I say profiling, I'm thinking hosts. I'm thinking about user groups, roles, responsibilities. Like, okay, finance. What tool sets are they using? What tool sets should they not be using? Where are their connections going? Who should they be emailing? So, but to apply that to every single party organization takes a lot of time, takes a lot of
It
effort.
takes time,
Yeah.
and for the math to work, I notice it takes time because
Yes.
it has to be able to build that base, and it takes time, and that's what it was so difficult about.
Yeah.
In fact, in security, for everything, when you do analyze, it takes time.
Yeah.
Even
And,
even if it's research, for example.
oh yeah, and I hope it does, because if not, I feel like that's um, it's like reading the headline of a article and being like, "Yep, that's my opinion, that's fact." Whereas like you didn't get the details, right? Because I mean, the devil really is in the details of seeing
It
every.
always is, isn't it?
Yeah, it always is. So like
Always
being
is.
able to sit there, like, and that's another thing, is that threat hunting isn't like this easy button. Like it's still another skill set that you got to really hone, master, and it takes a lot of time to get into. But I love it.
Before I will address the next question, Aaron, should we take another question from the
Yeah,
chat?
I see from Ashkay. Which one do you want to cover? Do you want to cover the network administration or?
Yeah, that one looks interesting.
Okay, let me see if I could show that one.
Can we put?
Or is that the wrong one? Oh, here
Oh
we
yeah,
go.
the other
There
one.
we go. That was the
Yeah,
one.
this is the one. Yeah.
Gotcha.
As a network administrator looking to get a practical experience in threat hunting, would you recommend starting with a simple EDR or Sysmon set up to monitor registry events, or is there a safer or better approach for a beginner to experiment with hands-on?
I'm going to say, actually, this is my favorite question so far, because I absolutely love Sysmon. For those of you,
I
if
know
you're
my colleagues are also using, so I
I
know what you
love
mean.
Sysmon. If someone's watching, they're unfamiliar with Sysmon. Basically, it's just a monitor from the Windows, system internal suite.
Yeah.
It was EDR logging before I think EDRs became a tool. Um, so it had that endpoint visibility that really is what EDRs look at now.
Yeah.
Like process, registry keys, file creates, all that stuff.
Everything. Yeah, I know.
So ironically, my first personal lab was with the Elastic instance.
Okay.
A couple Windows machines. I think I did 7, 10. I think I was trying to find a 98, but couldn't find it. But yeah, I wanted to see that. But basically, I installed Sysmon on here.
Hmm.
Everything pump into Elastic. Now,
Okay.
that was my first malware lab, and I would download malware, detonate it, and watch it, and just, you know. Now, I will say I was quite overwhelmed with the log, because with Sysmon you get that configuration file that you can modify. You can run it as is, which I don't recommend, because I would always use the configuration file, because you can change that. You can turn off those or ignore the processes that are going to happen. But that's where I started. So I feel like actually your question is spot on. Now, whenever it comes to just monitoring registry events, you can do, man, is there 26 events now? There's 26 events that you can tailor to your whatever your goal is. If you wanted to, you can turn all of them off except one through the configuration file and just slowly work your way through that. And if you're going to do that, I would say, focus on event code 1, which is process create. Start looking at what data that gives you. Start tuning your configuration file to ignore the boot up processes and the normal things. And then from there, you should have like a sizable amount of data, and then work to the next event, and then the next event. Or you could do the easy thing, go to GitHub and look for Sysmon configuration files that are created already, which there are some fantastic ones out there. But if you want the experience of what it takes to deploy Sysmon and tune it to your organization or your own personal lab, I'd recommend doing that. Honestly, I don't know if, well, I was unable financially to install an EDR in my environment. And that's why I kind of leaned on Sysmon, because it was that EDR logging. But yeah, Sysmon and a SIM of your choice. Now, I will say, I tried Splunk first, the community edition, because
Yeah.
I wasn't going to pay for I was going to pay for a license. If you're going to go with Splunk, grab one of those configuration files that exist already, because when you put a bare bones, completely blank Sysmon config file and you pump it into Splunk, you will void the license or the community license literally in 2 seconds. Just because the amount of data that's being captured.
It's just too much to the process.
What was that?
It's just too much data to the process.
Oh yeah. And I think it was, I could be wrong. It was 500 megabytes of logs.
Whoa.
Oh my
No,
gosh.
that's the community license. And I think I hit like 6 or 7 gigs in a minute.
Oh my God.
So they shut it down, which I don't blame them. That's completely abusing the community edition, which at the time
Storage costs money.
right. And I was like, okay, whatever. Like I'm experimenting with this. Like, I went to Elastic because I could build. I had my own server.
Yeah.
It was all on-prem and stuff, and I could do what I needed to. But it was just eye-opening, right? It was a fun experience.
Okay. I'll go to the next question. As a former SOC lead, you have scaled environments from reactive alerting to proactive hunts. Beyond threats detected, what metrics really show the intel to hunting breach is effective?
I don't want to say. Well, the whole goal is to reduce the dwell time, right?
Yeah.
That's always the number one.
Yeah.
Or like time to detect. That of course that would be the most, I guess, the strongest correlation that it's working. But because we're not so much detecting, I would say like the metrics that you're looking at is sorry, if you take that scope away, take that dwell time and the time to detect away, and say, how is Intel really focusing our efforts in improving threat hunting? I would look at like MITRE coverage, simply because I mean, we all speak MITRE attack, right?
Yeah.
The biggest thing here is if you're moving from reactive to proactive, then you can say we're running 10 hunts. This is our hypothesis. These are the MITRE attack TTPs or the MITRE attack IDs that it captures. And then under there list, here's the actors that use it, here's the malware that use it, and here's the tool set. So that one TTP might be linked to multiple groups or multiple malware. So running a single hunt, you may now be able to just say, instead of looking at the single hunt, it's not just one hunt. We are now being able, because it's behaviors and it's common behavior, we're now able to cover down on multiple threats. And then you start layering that on the MITRE attack matrix. And you now, instead of just like a single block, you have this big umbrella in like initial access. Then you move to execution, and you can say this execution is captured or it's commonly used by all these actors. And then now you're slowly building the list of how many adversaries you're proactively hunting for. Then you can look at how many pieces of malware that you're proactively looking for. And I don't mean that you have to set these up as detections. Scheduling a task or scheduling a search is just as proactive as manually running it. In fact, I find it better. That's like normally our first step to being more proactive is schedule these searches, because then you do that. Then you have the data versus saying, I'm going to manually run 10 this month. And then you go in with the mindset of, I'm going to run these. And then someone says, oh, by the way, we have an incident. We need you. Or can you do this task? Or can you do this training because it's cybersecurity awareness month, right? If you schedule it, now you have all this data. Now you have results. And you
Yeah.
can say, not only are we hunting for this amount of adversaries and this amount of malware, but here are our results. Here's the tuning that we did. Here's how we improved these queries to reduce false positives. And now we're slowly making our way to a detection. So that conversation and those metrics can really show how you are taking the intel provided by your CTI team or open source, applying it to your threat hunting methodology, and how you're improving the cybersecurity posture through your efforts. So that conversation I find is very, very effective when you because once you're past that, well, did you find anything or not? Once you're past that conversation speaks volumes to what you're doing and what the value is.
Yeah. Okay, Aaron.
Yeah, I'm going to switch a little bit further because I know we're getting at 2:55 here.
Yeah.
So let's talk about, you've posted about info stealers like Archinal exploiting Google Docs, SC2. How should organizations evolve pipelines to catch these hybrid cloud native threats? And what underrated framework beyond Sigma or Cyborg packages excites you the most?
Ooh, okay. So I will tell you this, and I'm going to be very transparent. I am just getting into threat hunting in the cloud. So that is like the whole mystery to me. So that question is actually a very good question that I would like the answer to. If you had it, that'd be great. But so how should organizations evolve pipelines to catch these? And what underrated framework beyond Sigma or Cyber package excites you the most? Underrated. That's tough. I will say, I recently as a past couple months, I stumbled across the MITRE Defend matrix. So, if once again, MITRE, you're welcome for all the plugs. But I found the defense framework, which talks about or highlight, like, their columns aren't how the adversaries are getting in. It's how you can improve the security posture in your environment.
Okay.
And it's the flip side of the MITRE attack matrix. So and what I've been trying to do is in conversations with customers is pair that together and show them how that can now improve their conversations that they're having and improve the documentation that they're taking. So to go beyond, this is what the attack was. Now that defense matrix, what it allows me to do is to understand, all right, here's what happened. And then here's a defend TTP or behavior that, and I'm going to call it a TTP behavior. That's probably the wrong phrasing, but it will tell you how to mitigate or defend against that in the future. So it now tells the whole story when you pair those together of, here was the attack. Once again, we'll go back to PowerShell and coded commands. They use PowerShell and coded commands. These are all the artifacts we found. We did the investigation, blah, 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 blah. Now, here's the recommendations that we provide to prevent this in the future. So that marrying of the two, I think, paints the bigger picture. Like I always talked about, showing relationships between events, but now it's not just showing relationships events. It's what we can do next to possibly prevent this in the future and defend better. So now in a report, it's not just, we found this, here are the artifacts, we're done. It's now actively saying or tying a recommendation to your organization to better defend, and then adding that value to the threat hunting efforts that you're doing. So now it's full picture, right?
Yeah.
We are at 2:50, so we're almost done here. Alex, did you want to ask one more question? Or Leah, how does your time look? I want to respect your time.
I'm good.
Alex, did you want to ask the last question?
Yeah, we can. You have run hands-on sessions like Hive Nightmare. How do you quantify the ROI of Intel-driven hunts, say in averting DICOM, targeted breaches, and how do you handle pushback from metrics-obsessed CISOs? Might be a hard question from my point of view. I was a CISO, by the way, in the
Oh
past.
yeah, okay. So
Al-
Yeah,
Alex
uh,
is he's a
I
metrics
was a CISO
Fred
in
CISO.
the past. Now it's like a VCISO because I'm working for 3 banks. So
Yeah.
oh, geez.
yeah,
And,
I know it's
and,
hard.
and Lee, don't mention any names here. We don't want to hear any.
No.
But also I was risk manager and auditor, so all these rules, I know how these things are working very well. And I worked with not one team, maybe, okay, right now I have maybe different teams, like 10 or 15 teams. But before, where I was working for another institution, it was I don't know, 10 to 100 teams.
Oof. God bless you.
Now you get it.
Yeah. Jeez.
I
Okay.
can't mention about this. If anyone wants to see what I'm talking about, here can see on my LinkedIn profile.
So when it comes to metrics and ROI, once again, the biggest thing we can do is show the time we saved hunters by providing these hunt packages or training them properly to create their own hunt packages. Um, being able to do that in a timely manner not only saves your organization and reduces the dwell time, but it also saves them time and research that doesn't have to be done because we've done it already.
Yeah,
And when you talk about metrics, I mean, it can be from the basic of your team was doing 2 ad hoc hunts a quarter. And these are arbitrary, but I've seen a lot. Or you're just starting threat hunting, and we were able to help them through the hunter platform reduce dwell time and improve the amount of hunts, increase the cadence, get on a proactive level, um, and really increase that cadence to 5-10 a quarter instead.
yeah,
And then once we're there, and once you start talking these numbers of we're doing it, we're hunting more effectively. Our dwell time is cutting down. You can talk about the reports that are created, going back to the threats that you're covering are now expanding too, because now you're running more hunts. Those metrics and the, not the hard metrics, but like the soft metrics of understanding the process, understanding how to run an investigation and how to take these artifacts from intel to make them actionable, where that isn't really you can't really measure that. That would be like that's or I should say it's tough to measure. But being
yeah,
able to, talk to upper management about that process being shortened is something that really helps understand helps them understand what the big picture is. Once again, not just we had 13 detections triggered this month and we handled all the cases, right? It's the whole start to finish, where we improved, how we're doing better, what we're finding. That once again, that big picture is really important instead of just simple metrics of yes, we hunted 4 times this quarter or whatever the case may be.
yeah, I agree. I think we are out of time.
Yeah, I think we're out of time.
Yeah.
So, Lee, thank you so much.
No, thanks for
Awesome.
having me. This was a pleasure.
Yeah, man. Thank you. If you want to stay on afterwards, I'm going to end it. Me and Alex will stay on just for a second. So, again,
Also,
everyone, thank you so much for joining us. Thank-
also not forget the next event, foundational and conceptual topic of on explainable AI. So we'll talk about XAI with Richard Badarun. Stay tuned and yeah, keep in touch.
Thank you.